There's this quote that I heard. It was, I think, from a boxer, and he said, "It's you know, the the value in a boxer is not how many punches you can take, but how many times you can fall or get knocked out and still come back up." Welcome back to Out of the Box podcast, where Steven and I talk about awesome exchange, extraordinary ideas. Today, we're going to be talking about how life can contain sacrifice and pain, and how that helps us uh, become stronger. And maybe if it what does it serve in our life? So without further ado, let's get started. So I want to I kind of wanted to start off with the idea of Adam and Eve, right? And Adam and Eve, when they were banished from the what we can call heaven, right? The garden. They were told to that they know how to work for their food. They had to, sacrifice the leisure that they had before, where food just automatically grew from trees, to now having to work and having to, I guess, sacrifice that leisure for the reality and responsibility that they had now, right? So it's almost like in that specific moment of life or of time, there was that exchange of, you know becoming it's almost like when we are children, we don't have that much responsibility, but then when we become more knowledgeable, when we grow up, we have those responsibilities, right? And so it's almost like our banishment, or our banishing from our parents, for example, right? That separation, we have to fend for ourselves, we have to work. And so it's that process of being not banished, but of becoming a man or a woman, right? And so I kind of wanted to start off with that idea. What do you think, Seal? Is there any correlations, that you see with sacrifice, with pain, that make us become more mature? Have you seen that in your life?
Yeah, I've seen it and experienced it and also read about it in terms of like all the psychology books I've had to read talk about whether they call that resilience. And some people build resilience when they go through a lot of pain and suffering in their life. Other people, it becomes traumatic and causes almost the opposite. But a lot of times and we often tell clients come into for counseling is like going through really hard times often builds up resilience. And it's when it maybe not when during when you're trying to overcome it, but it's after you overcome it that you become stronger, like you said. And
Yeah.
yeah, more tough skin, more tough kind of just in general. And
Yeah, I
when you
was
go through something hard and it's easier to deal with things in the future. Yeah.
yeah. It's almost like I was listening to a talk the other day of Jordan Peterson and Jocko Willings. I believe that's how you pronounce his last name. And this guy, he's been to war, you know, but he mentioned something very interesting where he said, you know, war was the best thing that ever happened to my life, but I don't wish that on anyone.
That's
You
interesting.
know, it's almost like a bittersweet experience where, when you undergo war or famine or, sacrifice or pain, you don't wish that on people, but some people find the beauty in it. It's a perspective aspect, where if you have the wrong perspective, you can either grow grow from it, or not, fall back from it. And so it's it's really interesting. Pain does in a way have its place in life, and sacrifice as well, because when we have when parents have a child, most of the time you'll see that they'll sacrifice their own passions and dreams to nurture the passions and dreams of their child, right? And so it's almost like a like a self-sacrifice, they give themselves completely to to give life and continue that life in their child, even if it means death for them. And so we've seen that throughout history, people are willing to sacrifice their life in order for their generations to continue. So it's a very interesting process that I just see throughout different scenarios of life, parenthood, friendships, romantic relationships. People are willing to do whatever it takes to win over a partner, even if it means, suffering with them or for them. That's something that we're willing to go through. Um, yeah, but I thought it was very interesting how he mentioned that war, was the best thing that ever happened to him, but he wouldn't wish it on anyone. What do
Yeah,
you think, Stu?
yeah, maybe means like he doesn't want to wish suffering on other people, because I guess maybe that could come off the wrong way, and people can interpret it different ways, and it just probably would feel strange to say that, I guess. And but it also means, like, for him personally though, like for him, like in hindsight, like after the going through it, maybe not when he was going through it, like not during it, but now that he has gone through it and come out, maybe he sees the benefits, and he's experienced them, otherwise maybe he wouldn't say that.
Yeah, because there's
Yeah.
people that have gone to war, and they've come back with traumas, like you said. They come back with PTSD, and that's when you see extreme, you know, like danger, extreme
Right.
horror, right? That's in front of your eyes, not in a TV or anything. Like it's literally in front of you,
Yeah, it's a lot different.
and it's a lot to process for sure.
Yeah.
But even in those occasions, people can see, you know, I guess positivity in that, right?
Yeah,
Or see the
yeah,
way out.
that's what's so interesting about it. And yeah, so I guess it's the question of does going through these painful things strengthen us? Does it, you know, lead to better things for us? I mean, it changes us definitely. Does it like make it? I mean, resilience is the key word I keep going back to. But yeah, I mean, it's going to make you more resilient to other things, because other things aren't going to seem as bad unless they're as bad as what you experienced before.
Mm. Or maybe he says that, war was the best thing that happened to me, but he doesn't wish it on anyone because he doesn't know how other people are going to take it. Maybe he
Yeah.
was able to take it in a positive way, but other people might not be able to handle that level of, pain or suffering that he got to undergo, because he talks about this story of this guy who, he was taken prisoner, and he talks about how some nights he couldn't sleep because he had so many wounds that rats were biting at them at night when he was trying to go to sleep. And you imagine that in your head, and it's like, wow, that's a place where there's just unending suffering. You can't go to sleep, you can't rest. And even with that, they came out, alive, and also were able to continue a life back, with their family and stuff. And so
Right.
it's crazy how much pain and sacrifice, you know, people are able to undergo. But I think it's the right mixture of sacrifice too. There's, like how we prepare for an exam, is also the same way that we can prepare for sacrifice and pain as well, because, for example, in the idea of Christianity, we have Christ. Jesus Christ died on the cross, which is, a death that is very shameful, right? Because usually people that were put on the cross were shamed upon for having done something very, very bad. And so, we see that there, that example of extreme suffering. But it was due to preparation, prayer, and love, those two coming together, that helped them undergo that. Of course there's the level of divinity that he had, of course, but if we take that example as well in our lives, you know, we see we can replicate that as well when we have to sacrifice our life for a friend or for a family member even. We've had we I mean, I've heard of examples where people have given blood, because they matched with somebody else, or matched with their bone marrow or something like that, and they were able to be donors. We give something of ourselves, or they give their best friend a kidney or something like that. Things of that sort where, they say like, hey, I'm willing to take, a hit so that you're okay, you know, and I don't need both kidneys. I
Yeah,
can work with one, but I want you to be alive, and that's a sacrifice in itself, a friendship sacrifice,
yeah.
right?
Making sacrifices can bring good things. Is
Yeah,
well, yeah,
because
sacrifice all the time and delay
yeah, I mean,
gratification. Like you said, for studying for a test, you had to sacrifice time in order and delay gratification of watching YouTube or doing whatever else you enjoy. You
mhm.
normally enjoy it to pass the test, for a greater good, for a greater goal that's beyond your current immediate pleasure kind of thing.
Mm. So sacrifice, oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, so sacrifice helps us understand long-term goals,
Yeah,
right?
pleasure.
Because we sacrifice in the moment, like you said, instant gratification. I like
Yeah,
that.
instant gratification, you're gonna get away from your goals unless your goals are just to seek instant pleasure all the time. But most times that's just gonna lead you into a rut where you don't get anything done.
Yeah. Yeah. So, which means that without pain or sacrifice, you can never build anything that's worth lasting more than your lifetime.
Yeah, like a legacy or a really huge goal that changes the world. Most of
Yeah.
the famous people out there will tell you that they went through so many failures and wanted to maybe give up a few times and all that kind of stuff and got rejected and all this stuff for their in terms of their goals or their life or what they're trying to do. And they just tell you that, if you quit, that's what kills the goal. That's what kills your accomplishments, because if you give up, then yeah, you're just not going to accomplish anything. You're just throwing it in, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I've
but
heard
pursuing
this.
builds up to where you want. Yeah.
There's this quote that I heard. It was, I think, from a boxer, and he said, it's, you know, the the value in a boxer is not how many punches you can take, but how many times you can fall or get knocked out and still come back up, right?
Right.
So it's not just, how many hits you can take, but how many times you're able to stand up after that. So I guess, in one scenario, in both scenarios, there's still pain involved. But what he's saying basically is that along with maybe discipline or resilience, pain can help you become stronger, right? Can develop that thick skin, almost like working out, right? You break those muscles and they grow back stronger.
Yeah, that's a good example. Do you think you can appreciate things unless you go through pain first, or unless
Ooh,
you're deprived of things first? How can you appreciate things if you're given them all the time?
yeah, yeah. I was talking to a friend the other day, and she was telling me that in her school, back then when she was going to, I think it was like middle school or something like that, because she's now a teacher there. She said that when she was there, they didn't have a bunch of like nice facilities, and they had to go to these classrooms that were beat up and everything. And now they're all renovated and things of that sort. So the kids that are going to those classrooms, sometimes they don't appreciate what they have, because she can see the difference, right? She went through the suffering. Now she sees that they're renovated. She sees the beauty in it, but they're not able to see that because they just have it there, right? They don't know the difference. And I think, to your point, I think that if you don't grow up with some sort of resistance, right? If you don't grow up with the resistance, it's kind of hard to understand what that feels like, what it feels to actually go through pain, what it feels to actually give of yourself to others. And maybe some people, maybe through volunteering, they're able to understand that self-sacrifice. Because when we grow up, you know, and have kids, we don't want our kids to go through the things that we went through, right? Like we want to give them a better life, right? But at the same time, and I've thought about this a couple times as well. If I ever have kids, like how am I going to raise them? Because I've had some challenges in my life. I've had some adversities in my life that I think have defined me. To Jocko's point, war helped them become a better person. And my adversities have helped me become a better person as well. And so I think about that. Will I offer those same opportunities to my kids so that they can also build thick skin? Or am I just going to provide it for them and make it easier for them and kind of like push them through the steps? And that's something that I think about
Yeah, that's
sometimes.
a very hard question. Yes.
Yeah, so but to your point, I think for sure adversity does lead to greater appreciation of what one has, instead of the scenario that is backwards, where you have everything, right? And since you have everything, I guess materialistically, then it's hard to see your life without it. And I was actually listening to a talk with Jordan Peterson as well, where he talks about how the the elite class normally tends to, I guess, continue their elite status onto their next generations, right? They pass it down almost. And so with this passing down, they're able to continue to provide that sort of lifestyle, or way of life, right? And and it's almost like anything under or lower than that is unacceptable in those areas, right? And
Right.
so I kind of see that point that you mentioned. you know yes, that a lot of elite class families will eventually pass down their business or their wealth, but what does that do to their family, right? Some families that have become, they themselves made that wealth. It's not a generational wealth. They themselves made that wealth. Sometimes they just let their kids do their own thing, right? And develop their own wealth, or their own fame. And so that happens, but parents, of course, with the love that they have towards their kids, they want to provide that. And so is it hampering them, by not giving them enough adversity?
That's a
And so that's something that's a very interesting question, how to raise kids in our current society.
very difficult question. Yeah.
So, but I do definitely agree. Like, I don't want to be redundant, but I do feel that it's you don't appreciate as much what is already given to you, right? The luxuries that are given to you, right? And so we think about it, our middle class or lower class even is richer than most countries, or like, so some other countries, you know their upper class, their middle class is, lower than our lower class, and so we think about that, it's like, wow, like, that's crazy. And so and since we're talking about Thanksgiving is coming up,
Yeah, talk about
you
appreciation.
know it's the appreciation aspect,
Yeah,
right? But for sure, I think that might be a key factor, right? That might be a key factor that might subsidize, I guess, in a way, the 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 adversity that one didn't receive, to appreciate what you have and understand, like, oh shoot, like, my grandparents or my parents actually had to go through all of this pain and suffering so that I could now today be able to afford a university or afford where I live. I'm fortunate enough to be in this position. And I think that might be the solution to not have entitlement.
yeah. I think my final like thing that makes me think of on that is like maybe that's what's happening in newer generations, like born into the technology age, and we have so many options now, like beyond belief compared to before. So I think it is hard whenever you're not when when you're inside it, when you're inside that circle, that bubble. It's hard to understand that probably what you're saying,
Hmm.
understanding the adversity if you're just born outside the adversity kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing is to volunteer and actually see, like, oh, shoot. Because I've never been homeless, thanks be to God. But I've been to like homeless shelters, and I seen what it is to live, but I'll never get to know exactly what that feels like.
Yeah,
Like, I'll get to see it and I can, put myself in their shoes, but I'll never really know what
what
it
really?
actually feels. And I've actually did this experiment with a couple of friends. I during this cold season, right? I think it was during November. We actually in support, of those homeless families, we actually created our own cardboard houses, and for a whole night, a cold night, it was, we got to live outside, sleep outside.
Yeah,
And then you think about it, and it's like, where do you go to the restroom? Like,
right.
different things of that sort, that you start to experience, like, oh wow, like, you're trying
Realize,
to make this house as warm as possible, as sealed as possible. And it's like, man, some people just don't have enough tape, or how do they make it work, and so it was, I guess, half fasting it, because we still had pillows and blankets and all that sort of stuff. Some people don't even have that. And so, but it was still challenging, right? And so it's it was, I guess, a taste of what it feels to be in that situation. But I'll never know what it is for a long term, right? How it feels to be a whole year homeless, or
yeah,
2 years, right? But you know I'm sure that when you hit rock bottom and there's nowhere to go down, then up, and there's only a way up, then I guess that's when, that's when you discover your limits of how much pain you can take, how much, you know of the dark side you can take. It's almost like Star Wars. How they balance the forces, right? Sometimes, the same force that they use to create light, right, is the same that creates darkness. And it's the same force, but it's just viewed in a different way. And depending on how you view it is depending on what side you choose, what force you decide to go with.
Yeah, like a battle.
Force doesn't change. It's the same force, but with a different intent, right? And so that's what changes the both sides. So I guess we'll leave it at that. And all right, guys. Well, let us know, what did you think about this podcast? Have you undergone any pain, suffering that has helped you in your life? We would like to know that in the comments down below. If you also like this podcast, please feel free to give us a like down below, subscribe to our channel for more, and hit the bell button so you receive notifications when we upload a new video. So until next time, we'll see you soon. Take care.